Hey sock knitters, so we are ready for our toe. This is an exciting moment because it means we are almost ready to try on our sock and see how the fit is. So we are going to do a wedge-shaped toe. This is the most classic shape of toe and I think also the most fit malleable, so it's going to fit the most feet. So I've only done the one shape of toe for our little handy guide, but I think it's going to fit everybody, and if not, hit me up. We'll talk about different ways to adapt. There's a ton of different more specific modifications out there if you have specific shaped feet that you would like to fit really closely, but I think this one fits a lot of different feet and I've seen it on a lot of different feet in a bunch of classes, so I think it fits really well. So wedge-shaped toe, we're here and we're ready to work our toe. If you are on small circulars, I would highly recommend that you switch to double points for the toe because we're going to be decreasing so rapidly. It's going to be much easier to switch to them now rather than later when they don't fit around your circular anymore. So if you need to switch from your circulars to your double points, they should be the same size as what you've worked the whole sock in. Your toe is no different. It should be in the same exact size needle. And then we need to set this up so that your beginning of round, you're going to start your beginning of round, and then you're going to transfer all the first section of stitches onto a needle, which should be 1/4 of the total stitches. So this will be on its own needle. And then your next needle will be the longest amount of stitches. This should be half the stitches. This is your top of the foot stitch needle. So you'll transfer this amount of stitches, should be between the 2 stitch markers. This is your half the amount of stitches on a needle. And then your final section of needle stitches should be the final 1/4 of stitches. That's your last section of stitches before the beginning of round marker. Once you've gotten those all transferred onto your double points, I like to place a little bit of a removable stitch marker at the beginning of the round because this is your beginning of round and you can't really use a regular stitch marker on double points because it'll fall off. So I just put it in the fabric there, so it's not going to go anywhere, but it will remind me that this cross section at the bottom and back of the foot is the beginning of the round. So just to double check, we've got our short amount of stitches on needle 1, short amount of stitches needle 1, long amount of stitches on needle 2, and another short amount of stitches on needle 3. So beginning of round, we're here. We're ready to work our wedge-shaped toe. So wedge-shaped toes are worked over all the stitches. There's 2 rows to repeat back and forth until we get down to half the total amount of stitches. So what that means is this is 64 stitches here. I'm going to repeat the 2 rows of the wedge-shaped toe until I'm down to 32 total stitches here. So row 1 is our decrease row, and there's going to be a decrease here, 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 and here. Now decreases are going to mirror each other, so they're going to be mirror image of each other here, where my thumbs and pointer fingers are. So what that looks like, needle 1, we're going to knit to within 3 stitches of the end of the needle. Sounds familiar because it's exactly like the gusset so far. So we're going to knit over to the last 3 stitches of this needle. Okay, I've got 3 stitches left, so I'm on round 1, needle 1 of the wedge-shaped toe shaping. So I've knit over to the last remaining 3 stitches. I'm going to knit 2 together, knit 1, and now needle 2 has its own set of instructions, but we're still on round 1. So I'm going to knit 1 and then slip, slip, knit, and I'm going to knit to within 3 stitches of this needle on the other side too. I'm going to fix this because I purled when I should have knit. So I'm knitting over to within 3 stitches of the end of this needle. Okay, I'm here. I have 3 stitches here, so I'm ready to finish out needle 2 of round 1, which says knit 2 the last 3. And I'm going to knit 2 together right here, knit 1, and now I'm ready for needle 3 of round 1. I'm going to knit 1 stitch, slip, slip, knit, and knit to the end of the needle, which is also the end of round 1. Okay, I finished the round 1, our decrease round. So we decreased here, we decreased here, we decreased here, and we decreased here. Now I'm going to knit 1 round even, and then I'm going to do round 1 again, and then round 1, another round of even knitting. So we're repeating a rows 1 and 2 of the wedge-shaped toe until we're down to half the total amount of stitches. So I'm going to repeat those until I'm down to 32, and then we'll rejoin together. All right, I'm at the point where I am down to half my original number of stitches. So at this point, I am only going to work around 1 of the toe decreases. So there will no longer be a plain row of knitting between my decrease rows. I'm just going to work round 1 constantly until I am down to 16 total stitches. So that'll be 8 on this needle, 4 on this needle, and 4 on this needle. So again, I'm just going to work round 1 all the way around until I have totally decreased down to 16 total stitches. So we've officially completed the toe decreases. I've got my yarn here in the center at the beginning of round. So needle 1 has 4 stitches, needle 2 has 8, and needle 3 also has 4. So now we need to set this up so that we can do our Kitchener stitch graft. And to do that, we need to get these stitches on the same needle so that we have 8 in front and 8 in back. So we're just going to knit across the 4 stitches on needle 1 using needle 3. So we're eliminating a needle. So I'm knitting these 4 onto needle 3. So we have our 8 here and our 8 here. There's our toe. Woohoo! Okay, so yarn, when you're doing your Kitchener stitch, always needs to be coming off of your back needle. So put that needle to the back, move the other one to the front. So I just did a little flip. So the one that the yarn's connected to is sitting to the back. So now it's time to graft. So I'm going to cut the yarn. You don't need a ton. Should be about 3 times the length of the seam, which would be way tiny in this case. So about 12 inches is plenty, gives you room to work. I'm going to thread this onto a tapestry needle. Now in your sock notes packet, I put in a Kitchener cheat sheet for you. There's lots of videos out there that go into really good detail, but once you've done this a couple of times, the cheat sheet's usually enough to get you through. So we're here, we've got our yarn on the tapestry needle and it's coming off the back. I'm going to slide these up to the tip, and we're going to start our Kitchener stitch. So, if you're looking at the cheat sheet while you do this, it says setup, front purl on. That means you're going to leave the front purl stitch on the needle, but pull, and you're going to go in purlwise and pull the yarn through that stitch. Then it says setup number 2, back knit on. So your back stitch, you're going to go in as if to knit, and pull the yarn through. Once you've done the setup, it's time to work the actual Kitchener. So we're back to step 1 for real. We're going to front knit off, front purl on, back purl, back purl off, back knit on. So coming back to the front, because we just finished steps 1 through 4, we're going to repeat these back and forth. So 1 front knit off, front purl on, back purl off, back knit on. Now the trick with Kitchener is that you want to make sure you're keeping your yarn, your working yarn under the needles. It can sometimes get caught on top of these double points and then it looks like an extra stitch. So just take extra care that you're bringing the yarn under all the needles at all times so you don't end up with any extra yarn overs. Okay, we're at the last couple of stitches here. You do them as normal, and you have one stitch left on each needle. So what you need to do is both of the off steps in order to get these completely off the needles. So in order to get these two completely off the needles, we need to do the front knit off step and the back purl off step. Then we can pull the yarn through, and we have grafted our toe. Now we can weave in our ends. So when you're weaving in your toe yarn, your yarn's coming off this corner here. I like to stick the needle through to the wrong side as close to that point as I can. I'm going to turn the sock inside out. And now we can weave in our toe yarn. So pick a channel that you want to weave along. It can be as close to the tip as you'd like. You can work down this side seam. Whatever you choose, just be consistent. Weaving at ends is a personal thing. So go whichever way you feel is most comfortable and that you'll feel most safe doing. So I like to weave about an inch or so, and then just tie one little sewing knot, which is where you pull it through partially. You've got a big loop here, and then you stick the needle through the loop and pull it tight. And then I'll weave just a couple further than that for safety. Okay, and now we can trim. We're all set there. So I'll just weave in the rest of my ends. Then you're done. Okay, that's our first custom fit sock. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We can schedule a Zoom meeting or FaceTime if you have any questions or concerns. I can send along a closer up video of the Kitchener stitch, whatever is going to be most helpful, but feel free to reach out to me. Happy sock knitting.